Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Legacy Leaders. I'm Scott McMeans, today joined by Jon McCutcheon. He's an author, business owner with a hell of a lot of experience and a really cool story to tell. Before we get into all that, I'm going to turn the microphone and the camera over to Jon and have him introduce himself. Tell us a little bit about himself and why he's so good at what he does. So, Jon, microphone, camera are yours. Tell us your story.
Thank you. Thank you, Scott. I appreciate it. Thanks for letting me be here.
Absolutely.
Yeah, my background's odd. I've done a kind of a weird zigzaggy journey through my corporate career. So I cut my teeth originally just doing, I guess what you would say is basic work to get through to my first real career job, which was at Ryder, and focused specifically on logistics and supply chain for about 30 years. Um, and that led me to a lot of different opportunities, and I tried to take as many as I could, even if it was a little strange and a little off path, because I think everything kind of adds to your bucket of tools that you can put in your toolkit. Yeah, so I took a weird path, got through the corporate life. I've worked for about six Fortune 100 or better companies, and finally retired and started my own business and tried to apply what I learned from all of those 30 plus years over on this side.
Okay, so you're in logistics, right? So walk us through how does a career in logistics turn into owning your own business? And what do you do with your own business? You've written a book, so there's a lot to unpeel here. Want to make sure that the story of Jonathon McCutcheon gets told. So let's kind of walk our way through. You start a career with Ryder with logistics. How do you transition from that into writing a book? How do you start your own business? How's this work?
So it's really funny. I had some aspirations to be really creative when I was young. I started this thought of a book I had actually when I was 17 and realized very quickly I was a horrible writer. I absolutely had zero talent whatsoever in telling stories. And so I just kind of shelved it, but I carried that silly little set of papers that I wrote with me my entire life. And one day I just finally got to the point where I'm like, I think it's time to tell that story now. And my daughter, who was born and now about to go to college, which went by in a flash,
Mhm.
uh, she and I started working on that. I thought this is a great thing for her and I to do as a bonding because she was interested in computers, and I'd been teaching her as many things like Excel and Word when she was like 10. So she just had the curiosity, so I fed it. And yeah, when she turned 13, we started working on it together. We pulled it out and dusted it off and completely started rewriting it. And that led to just this creative, fun space that I got to do with my daughter, whether I was traveling and no matter where I was, we could talk about it. And that led me to really start enjoying it. And so I went through three or four other novels and books and thoughts, never quite completing them, but just kind of trying to find what was right until I landed on the two things I really liked. One was a business toolkit set of all the business tools I've ever used my entire life and how to use them in a productive way because it seems to get left out. But I
Mhm.
also focused on a silly side that was more that creative bug I've always had that I just never found an outlet for. I turned to a lot of current events in philosophy, religion, and politics. So all the things nobody wants to talk about, I put together in a book. And based on my Christian faith, I decided I needed to say something because I see it, and that's just
Okay.
kind of how it worked. So it kind of went all over the place. Yeah.
Okay, that real quick, because this is really a defining moment of who you are as a person. You said you saw something and you needed to say something. What was that you saw, and what was it that you needed to say?
Sure. I grew up as a Christian, basically.
Hmm.
I taught Sunday school. I have traveled 40 times in my career, like living in 40 different cities. So
Oh
I've been to a
wow.
lot of churches, seen a lot of different. I don't get hung up on all the differences in between versions of Christianity. I just stick to the main tenets. And for me, what I see is the people as time goes on. And I remember seeing some of this when I was a kid, but I defined it differently. And now, as I'm older, as an adult, I see it for what it was. It's people that use something like Christianity or any religion, and they weaponize it. They use it against people, and so the Christianity and other religions get bad names because of the abuse by people, not as a tenet of the actual religion. We see it all the time, right? We talk about 911, and all of a sudden, anybody that is any kind of Middle Eastern religion is all of a sudden a terrorist, and
Yeah.
you know what I mean? It gets applied, and now what I see is more and more of this Christian nationalism that is nothing about Christianity, and it just irritates me because I get people saying, "Oh, you're a horrible person. You're a Christian." I'm like, I'm not that. I'm not those guys. I'm not abusing this, you know. And
Yeah,
so it became
we've
a
gone a
thing.
long way. We've gone a long way from judging somebody by the content or their character as opposed to who you think they are when they walk in the door.
Yes,
Yeah, that's it's
absolutely.
a weird scenario, I think, in this country, which can be corrected with folks like yourself and others just seeing what needs to be or seeing what's happening and saying what needs to be said, not to defend ourselves, but just to point out whether it's a level of hypocrisy or it's a level of fact that needs to be stated. It's not about radicalism. It's not about grouping everybody into one category. It's what are you doing as an individual to contribute to society? Are you adding or are you detracting from it? And I think that's how we need to look at people.
Absolutely. I couldn't have said it better. It absolutely is. And it's not, again, I take the point in my book. It's a little harsh. It comes across pretty aggressively, because I call it like I see it, but it's rooted in history. You know, we don't get a real account of history. We get various versions depending on where you grow up and who you are and how you're viewed by society. Um, Marginalized groups don't get a say in history. They're not the ones writing the
Exactly.
books. And so, you know, I grew up, I'm old. I've seen it. I was there. I lived it. So I can't talk about 1800s, but I can talk about the 60s and on. And so when I look at that, I go, okay, this isn't how it was. The book I'm reading that my daughter went to school with is not what happened. I was there,
Yeah.
in some of these cases. And, you know, it became a thing where it just needs to be addressed because it's not something that's become conscious behavior. It's become something we've just turned into a routine. It's just normal for us to say the things we say, do the things we do. And what we see now with all this division that's going on, um, you know, it brings it out more and more and more. What people are thinking in their heads is just not good. It's not right in some cases.
Yeah.
I try to keep it fairly, it doesn't get preachy, it doesn't get into the Bible. It wasn't about trying to convert or proselytize folks. It's really just about saying, look, things aren't always what they look to be, and you can't judge an entire group of people for whatever reason and however you're grouping them just on the basis of a few of the actions of a few.
Yeah.
Uh, and so that was really it. It just bugged me because I grew up in this wonderful, loving church environment, and all I hear about are Catholic priests, this and you know,
Huh.
I, I, I I'm not trying to diminish if somebody was hurt, victimized, and power was abused, but it wasn't by the religion. It wasn't by
Right. It's by the person, the
it's by the
individual
person.
that
Yes,
decided to do whatever they decided to do against what the teachings are. And that's what I find so interesting is we are so mob mentality towards what's happening as opposed to looking at individuals that contribute right, wrong, or indifferent. We look at like whenever there's something in the news, the first thing we try to figure out is okay, what race category do they fall into? What
yes,
political party do they fall into?
yes.
And what identity are they going to have so we can either defend them or go after them, as opposed to just saying, there's a crazy person that just did this crazy thing against other people. Why are we even giving it any more thought than let's look at the craziness behind the person or the evil behind the person that just did that? And I think it's a really weird scenario that we are right now in society because we immediately go to whatever identity we want to defend or go after, as opposed to just pulling back and saying what actually happened and why did it happen the way it did. I don't want to
Exactly.
go down this rabbit hole any further,
Sure.
but I appreciate the candid nature of the conversation, particularly because you wrote a book about it, and it's something that is near to you. But I want to get back and talk about
Mhm.
your business, right? So logistics is your core. So walk me through what does your business do and why are you so good at it?
Sure. So my business, I'm involved in a lot of things. So my business is a consulting business. Through that, I'm actually formally a COO full time now, which is another weird that's happened in my path of how I created this consulting business. It's never ever done. The consulting business has never done what I thought I was going to do, but I find opportunities, so I take it, and it just leads me to weird places. Yeah, so I'm a full-time COO of a company that's a software startup. I own my own consulting company. I just started a publishing company because I couldn't find anybody that would publish my books inexpensively, and I'm not paying $50,000 or more to publish a book. So I started becoming a publisher. And now I publish books of other people that don't want to pay $50,000 that want to try their hand at something. So my business is constantly expanding, but what I love about it is it takes its own direction based on what's there and what's around, and it's not focused on me. It's not the traditional set your business plan and go after this.
Mhm.
I just decided to embrace life and say, let's see where it takes me, and it's taken me some crazy places. But I think what my focus has been is those 30 years, you can't discount those in the corporate world. I was not happy, a large portion of it. I clash with people quite a bit. I'm very firm in my ethics. I don't bend. So when someone
Mhm.
makes a racist joke in front of me, call it out. I don't accept it. It's not acceptable. And that's just one example because of the topic. But for me, it was really about my advancement and my worth, I think, and my value that I brought was being able to get accomplishments done. Sometimes in the early days, it wasn't always the right way as I learned how to deal with people and not knock people down that get in my way.
Mhm.
So we all have to learn how to balance that. But it really focused on communication
Okay.
between silos. I think that's that's one of the first. There's maybe three things that I think are key. One is the silos. People tend to live within their own silo. They may make it or the company makes it, and there's a beginning and end, and you don't care what happens around the outsides of that. And
Yeah.
so I've lived between the silos, bringing them together and collaborating with them. I look at it as every silo that exists there's somebody has an output that is somebody else's input, and vice versa. So if you can understand that between silos, there's an output from one silo as an input to another, and no one's guarding that space. If you start playing in that space, you find a lot of efficiencies and a
Yeah.
lot of ways to speed it up. Um, so I created this anti-silo mindset, and that's really what supply chain is. If you look at it, you've got, as a base, I started in transportation, then I got into logistics, which expands transportation plus warehousing and distribution. And then I got into forecasting and demand planning and all the other ends of it. And next thing you know, I'm now in supply chain. And that one thing I used to do in transport is nothing but a little cog in that big wheel.
Yeah.
And there's gives and takes. So people tend to look at silos and go, oh, every business silo has to be productive. Well, that's actually not reality. And you'll kill yourself trying it. In fact, you'll probably bankrupt yourself trying it because the reality is there's gives and takes in any system.
Yeah.
That's just pretty basic information, but people don't think about that. In that, if I'm in a supply chain looking at up above at the top level, I have to look and see where my demand planning is and where my forecasting and where my warehousing distribution network is laid out and where my transportation network is laid out. And each of those silos, some days are going to be better than others, but what you want to do is optimize the whole. It's like an algorithm in a transportation management system. You can't there is no such thing as the perfect plan. You could plan once a year for the entire
Mhm.
year, all your shipments, and it's going to look a whole lot better than if you plan once a month. But at the end of the day, you have to plan based on the reality of the demand of the customers. So you're still planning once a day, at least once a day, if not three or four times a day. That means you have to have a cutoff. That means that something is not going to fit perfectly. So you're not looking to optimize in an optimization every single shipment. You're looking to optimize the entire set of shipments at the lowest cost and the right level of service. It's the
Okay.
same thing in supply chain. If you take that bigger, okay, my warehousing may lose money because they're so, or I'm sorry, my transport may lose money because my warehousing are in cheap places that are affordable to run, and that creates longer distances. I could put stuff in the middle of Manhattan, but I'm also going to pay way
Yeah.
more, and that's going to deflect from any savings you're going to get on transport. So it's a balancing act of optimizing across all of those silos. And you can just keep going up. And then from supply chain, it's the whole business, right? It's your entire
Yeah.
business piece. You're always looking to optimize at the top level across what the best you can, and then sub-optimize each one below it. Sorry.
Okay. No, I love the idea of the silo definition, right?
Mhm.
And I think everybody can relate to the idea of the silo that they live in right now, right?
Right. Right.
My department does this. Okay. But if you were to do your job better, could you make the next person down the
Hmm.
chain's job easier? And eventually it comes back around. So whoever's doing the job before you get to touch it
Yeah.
does a
Yep.
better job, then your job's easier. And it always boils down to, and this is a conversation I've had before, nobody in the organization is any more important than anybody else. Your
Absolutely.
contribution and how you contribute, what you contribute, and the manner by which you contribute is the most important asset, is the most important thing that you can do in a business because whether you're the janitor or the CEO, if you don't do your job well, the other one in that equation doesn't have a very good job to go to. And what I mean by that is if the janitor decides not to do his job, the CEO has a messy conference room, a disgusting looking office building that he can't entertain clients, shareholders, or recruit new employees to. But if the CEO is not doing his job, there's nothing for the janitor to clean. So neither one of them is any more important than the other one. But if they did their job to the utmost fullest, how much easier is the other person's job?
Absolutely.
Right. And
Exactly.
that's why I love that. Let's break the silos down. And once you do break those walls and allow people to see what the other contributions are from other departments, they realize, oh, wow. Okay. So if I do my job, I make his job easier and her job becomes less complicated. Therefore, we're all winning. Okay, I'll just do my job better. Right? At
Right.
least that's the expectation you would have.
Yeah.
But it's
And
crazy how many people don't think that way because
it is.
all they do is, well, this is what I get paid to do this, and I don't care about anybody else.
Yep.
Yeah.
And,
That's
and,
why.
and I'm
Go
sorry,
ahead.
and you just hit on a great, exactly the perfect point, right? It's now back to that's the process. Okay, let's talk about eliminating silos and educating people on silos. But it really comes down to the people. People today feel like they have no power, no say,
Mhm.
especially in lower positions where they don't have a clue what's going on. Maybe they don't have the best communication. But if you give someone the empowerment to say, here's your room that you live in, and you can make all the changes you want to fix it, and not only fix it for you, but your buddy Fred over here who takes your work from you and has to do more stuff with it, right?
Mhm.
And if people start understanding and feeling like that, like most people don't, I've seen so many, I've been in so many conversations in the corporate world about bonuses and how do you repair people, how do you repay people? You know what? Stop talking about the money. I mean, pay them right. You don't that doesn't become an issue. What the issue is they want to feel like they're contributing in a meaningful way and that
Yeah.
they matter. And most people just go through the rote motions. It's like we're back in the old days with assembly lines, and Henry Ford's original thing, right? And we're just like pass the object down, man.
Yeah.
Pass the object
Get it to
down.
the next person. Get it next. But if I do my job better, I can easily pass it to the next person.
Yes,
It
yes.
just
And
makes
then
it
and
easier.
now the next person, you're like, hey, man, I noticed what you did. Thanks. That's really helping me.
Yeah.
And you are now officially leading without any kind of authority by just taking control of your area and saying, I don't have to I always laugh about people that truck when they're driving down the truck the highway and they're in a little mini car and they're next to an 18 wheeler and they will cut that 18 wheeler off like nothing. And I'm like, you understand that yellow line between you and him, that's not real. That's what he's supposed to obey. But if he decides not to, you're squashed like a bug.
Yeah.
That line, just like the groupings we group ourselves in by skin color and all those other things, that line is fake. It's manufactured. It doesn't
Yeah.
mean anything. That silo doesn't mean anything. You're just being grouped and but people take it as if it were a wall and it's like it's not a wall. You are more than
Yeah.
welcome to explore outside of that. So
Well, I love let's take this a little bit further because I love this discussion about your contributions and how you matter.
mhm,
It's not one of my clients, but a great example of this was there was a dog food company that one of my colleagues was working with. and they did an alignment. They went around and talked to all the different employees, and they got to a gentleman who was a tow motor driver, right? Driving a forklift around the warehouse. And he asked him, "What do you do here?" He goes, "I move the food from there to there." Okay. And put it on the truck. After they did their alignment and they sat everybody down and showed them how their contributions matter, after the session, they came back to that same gentleman and asked him, "Hey, what do you do here?" Because you know what? I never thought about it. But what I do is I make sure the dogs in the region get fed every day because I'm the one that moves it from that location post production onto the truck so we can get to the stores. That's my job. I'm the one that makes sure that the dogs get fed. How different of a perspective is that in less than one day that he went
Amazing.
from my job is I move shit, I don't care, to,
Right.
oh my God, I'm the one that makes it happen because
Yeah.
if I'm not moving it, it's not going from post production onto the truck and dogs don't get fed. So I'm responsible for dogs getting fed throughout the region. What a tremendous, monumental change in his mindset. And I say that, Jonathan, because what we're talking about is let's get rid of the silo mentality and think about what does my contribution mean to this organization? And if the organization gives me the authority to do what I do,
Mhm.
the accountability for the outcomes of how I perform, the autonomy to make the decisions necessary to do my job the way I think is working best, and eventually gives me the appreciation for a job well done, I'd never want to leave this organization because it's given me everything I've ever wanted.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I
Isn't
think
that
that's
great?
key. Yeah, it's in our heads, right?
Yeah.
We're given a picture and we're told, don't think about the elephant, and we think about the elephant. The
That's
silo
a
is
great
the
one.
elephant, right? And it's like, oh, don't cross your lane, stay in your lane. And yeah, it's all the difference in the world. And you get a couple hundred people like that in your organization, they can literally transform your
Yeah.
organization.
Okay. And what I want to, okay, and I 100% agree with you. It takes 100 people to make that change,
Yep.
but it takes 3 people to stay right where you are. Because if three
Yes.
people don't want to make the change, you're going to have a really hard time making that because
Yes.
they're so stuck in their ways and they don't see what I like to say. They don't see the forest through the trees because all they're focused on are all the maple trees they see. And they can't see that there's elms and birches and oaks and pines and there's all these different trees, but they're so focused on that one tree. You got to take a step back and see the bigger picture, whether it's your contribution to that big picture or just to take a step back and see how wonderful this production is because it's orchestrated like music. There's so much going on. I just want to watch it and see how this all unfolds. That's a
Yeah.
really cool, I say, perspective because I like to take my clients and their business team members. Let's pull all the way back and see who does what, and just watch what happens here. Because you guys are more than just what you say on your masthead. You're so much more. You're a combination of people, personalities, contributions. It's everything that rolls up into one business trying to get something done. It's pretty cool. I want to get back real quick. You made comment about there were 3 things that you think were important. We
Yep.
nailed on communication. What were the other 2?
The other two, I think, is I learned the most valuable lesson, and it's the silliest thing that hindsight makes absolute common sense. And it took me a long time and a lot of companies and a lot of my boss used to tell me this. It's okay to knock people down when they get in your way. You just got to pick them back up later. And that stuck with me. I'm like, well, that sounds like giving me permission to knock people down. That's how I took it at the time because I'm young and I'm aggressive and I'm like,
Sure.
don't get in my way. I'm going to get results. What I found the simplest thing is stop talking in statements, start talking in questions. People respond differently to a question than a statement. And especially if you're aggressive or, you know,
Yeah.
I know the difference between assertive and aggressive. I've been both in my career off and on, the positive side and the negative side. And I found that just asking questions takes 90% of the heat off of it.
Yeah.
A statement almost always to a defensive employee is going to come across as an accusation. But a question is hard. It's really hard to make a question. I mean, people can do it, but it's hard to make a question insulting. If I say, it doesn't look like you're doing the right thing here, that's a different take than help me understand how you see what you're doing here is the right way to do that. And all of
Yeah.
a sudden, it's like, okay, you're asking me to show you something. You want my help. You're not demeaning me. You're not standing
Great.
there pushing it.
No, that's a great change in the mindset and approach to a conversation as opposed to accusation. It's inquisition and it's more curiosity. Like, okay, I'm not sure I understand what you're doing. Show me what you're doing. And why do you think that works better? And you know what? You may be thinking it's supposed to be done ABC, and they show
Right.
you BCF actually works better. Oh my
Yep.
God. Okay. Let's get the group around here and say, watch what Billy's doing. He actually does it better than we've done before. Let's try this for 2 weeks. And
Hmm.
if we find it actually is better, we're going to do this from now on. But let's give it a try for 2 weeks.
Yep.
That is encouraging risk taking. That is giving people the autonomy, the authority to do things in their own job that could, in fact, benefit the organization. Jonathan, I love that aspect. Start talking in questions. That's a really good way of doing it. Thank you for that.
It
That's a good one.
it's not 100%, but it encompasses the mindset of what I learned just in that simple piece. I mean, there's
Yeah,
other things to effective communication, but just starting with that one little thing made all the difference in my career, in my world.
yeah.
People used to think of me as he gets such good results, but he's such a hard person to work with, and I'm like I'm just being factual, I think, in my head, and that's not how it's being
Yeah.
perceived.
Well, okay, now
Yes.
turn the tables on yourself, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
If you were you watching you be that person, what would you say to yourself? The first thing because I think I understand your personality. You'd be the first one to say, Jonathan, stop being such an ass. Like, what are you
Yeah.
doing?
Yeah,
Right?
absolutely.
But in your
Absolutely.
head, your mindset is, I'm doing this because this is what I know I've been trained, as opposed to, well, maybe there is a better way. Hang on a second. Right. And we have to catch ourselves. And that's what good leaders do is we catch ourselves. We catch ourselves in a mistake, and before it becomes a problem, we fix it. That's what good leaders do.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
And it's
You had
it's a
a
hard skill to learn. It's a hard skill to
oh, so
learn.
okay. You know why it's a hard skill to learn? Because it takes humility and a complete removal of your ego to do that. And
Yeah.
that's why it's a hard thing to do.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But you know what? After you get beaten down a few times, after you've got that lesson that you've learned, okay, now I figured it out. Okay, I'm good. I'll take these bruises and these battle scars and I'll move forward, but at least I'm better for it, right?
That
Makes a
is
big difference.
95% of my experience is hard knocks. I got the crap
Yeah.
with a stick by somebody.
Yeah.
Sometimes I knew it was coming and I took the responsibility because I said, nah, I did that and I'm willing to own up. That's fine. Then
Yeah.
sometimes you other times you had no idea the stick was coming. You're like, I thought I was doing right, but nope. So yeah, I think that was number two, and the third one really ties in, but it's the same thing. I'm a lifelong learner. I can't stop learning. I actively seek out things if it's not presenting itself to me. That is huge because I tend to take things at kind of a surface level most of the time. Blockchain, just throwing out a couple quick things. Blockchain, I'm 100% convinced it's an amazing tool, but it is not a catch-all that solves every kind of tool.
Okay.
But I learned enough and I studied enough and I got engrossed enough into it that I was able to actually speak at BITA and some other places specifically about, you know what? Stop trying to say that this is the greatest thing since sliced bread. Start focusing the identity of what this tool actually does for you and why it's different than a million other solutions that are easier to do than blockchain. And it's just one example, but it's things like management processes, change management, the Cotter models. This is the second book I haven't published it yet, but I'm writing it. It's literally a set of 20 books, and it's about all the tools I learned from every kind of agile, Scrum, Lean Six Sigma. I'm a Lean Six Sigma black belt. I've lived in tools my entire life. The difference is having the right tool at the right time. If you're a mechanic or anybody that works with physical tools, like you're in the middle of a job and you don't have the right tool, you're screwed. You got to go get it. You got to go find somebody that's got one, whatever. Um, but also, you can get overwhelmed by having too many tools in your toolkit, and you think I got to use 9 of these. I
Yeah.
see
Yeah.
the Lean Six Sigma black belts. The reason they get the eye roll when you say Lean Six Sigma or the word statistics is because a lot of these guys were taught to go out there and use every freaking tool I showed you. Well, I showed you 90 tools. Dude, you're going to use four at best every
Yeah, if
single
you're
time.
lucky.
There's
Yeah.
some standards, right? There's some standards. There's a define sheet, and there's certain tools you use pretty much that people don't even know are part of Lean Six Sigma toolkit. They just knew it for a different name. But I've seen guys go through and take 9 months to do a project, and it's like because they ran through every stinking tool that didn't add value to anything.
Yeah.
And so being a lifetime learner is, I guess I would, I'm making this up on the spot because I just talked myself into it as I was rambling.
You're good. You're good. I love it
I
though.
I am a discerning lifelong learner, meaning I look for things that I can apply somehow, some way, in something. Um, I taught myself physics. I never got to have, I grew up in the South, shoot me. School systems, not great. Sorry for anybody that's in the South, but I think this is Northeast audience, so I think we're
You're
good.
good.
Growing up in Florida, yeah, the horrible school system. I never once had a geography lesson in my entire life. I never once also had a single physics lesson in my life. I can tell you I use physics more in real life than I have ever done with trigonometry and most of the higher maths. And now, nothing against higher math. I liked it. It's just not applicable to what I do. So I went out and found a Nobel laureate that got a Nobel Peace Prize in physics that said, anybody can do what I do. Here's the path. And he wrote it out. I'm like, well, he gave me a roadmap. So I just started at first grade with whatever the math was. And I went through every course this guy as a physicist went through in his life. And it's fascinating how much I picked up and learned, even at my age, and my retention's kind of slowly getting down there. It's I love it, and I can talk intelligently about real world things that are happening in physics, and I understand why they're important. It's a basis that I just found a hole missing in my education. I still have to tackle the whole geography. Although being in supply chain and logistics,
Kind of
I've
come to you
learned by
better.
default over 40 years where most of these places are. I still work with people that think that Alabama and Alaska are interchangeable because of the initials of the states. They think Alaska is AL, and yeah, I don't know what they think Alabama is, but it happens every day. You wouldn't believe. Silly little things. But
Yeah.
yeah, a lifelong learner with discernment means being able to really find where you're missing skill sets or gaps in knowledge that could hurt you, or is a boon that could help you grow in an area you want to, or maybe it's just, you know what, I've always been interested in that and I never thought about it. I mean, I've taught myself to code a couple times. I'm horrible at it. I will never be a developer. I don't have that skill set in me, but I understand it. I can manage developers all day long.
The
So
other
yeah,
thing too, I think is I find interesting about you and the story you're telling is, yes, you're a lifelong learner, but you're pursuing the voids that you knew was in your brain or your portfolio of knowledge, if you would, and you've gravitated towards the things you enjoy, and you've just admitted, I'm not good at that one. I'm never going to be good at it. I really don't want to do it, so I'm not going to do it, right? And I think more people need to be cognitive or cognizant of the idea just because you're interested in it doesn't mean you're going to be good at it. And just because you're
right.
good at it doesn't mean you're going to like doing it, right? So there's a common thread when it comes to picking your career role or picking your spot. Find something you're passionate about and follow it. And I think one of the things that comes out of these different podcasts I've done is everybody finds their passion. And it may not be the business that they're in, it's the business of being in business that they love. And they just so happen to pick that market. It doesn't matter as long as you're passionate because you will follow and pursue your passions because that's something you're interested in. And as you go, you're explaining, and I appreciate it. If you go as a lifelong learner, you realize I don't know this about that thing, so I'm going to go get that information, and that's going to make me better. And if you're passionate about it, it's not hard to learn it. It's because you're learning it because it means something to you, as opposed to being a 16-year-old kid in class going, I'm never going to use this. I hate it.
Yeah,
Right? It's just a
yeah,
different mentality.
it
This has been
absolutely
great.
is.
I want to
Absolutely.
thank you, man. Some amazing lessons. I really appreciate, break down the communications and the silos. Make sure that you start talking in questions and be a lifelong learner. Three amazing pieces of information. Lots of other stuff thrown in here too. Are there any last words you have for the audience, John?
No, I would just say, I guess the one thing, so I have a degree in psychology, so I gotta end with
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
That's always been my passion, even though it's not a marketable thing for me. Um, Everybody has imposter syndrome. Don't let anybody tell you they have
Mhm.
never experienced that in their life. I think that is one of the biggest blockers that we don't feel adequate about ourselves. Guess what? The best CEO in the world doesn't feel good about himself. I promise you. He just is really good at hiding it. Believe in yourself, do the right things. If they don't work, try something different, but don't get defeated. You just got to keep being positive and focused on moving forward, even if it's baby steps.
I
But
like that.
believe in yourself. That's
I
that's it.
That is a perfect way to end the conversation, Jonathan. So I thank you for that. Really good tidbit. Thank you for being on the program. And
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
oh, it was
Yeah.
great. I appreciate everything that you had to say. All the information to get in touch with Jonathan will be in the description down below. And we will see everybody on the next episode of Legacy Leaders. Bye now.